Hey there, it's JohnBerry555, and while this review may be about almost 3 months late, I'm finally reviewing the season finale of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 1. So, of course, it was only a 10-episode season, so the 10th episode, it was the last episode, and that episode being A Quality of Mercy. And I have to say, this was a spectacular episode. So spoilers galore, of course. But main part of this episode was the simple fact that it is set during the same events as Star Trek's original series Balance of Terror. Gotta get that right off the bat. In fact, before I rewatched that episode and I also rewatched that episode. I rewatched both episodes just so I have all the context for this review in my head. The important thing is time travel is involved, but not time travel. Basically, Pike is given the opportunity to basically see what would happen if he does circumvent his fate. And few changes that would happen. Well, he's still in command as Empire, but Kirk is the captain of the Farragut instead. That's the main change. But they do bring Kirk into this episode because they had to. And it is kind of interesting that they managed to pull that off. But it does kind of make sense. If Kirk wasn't available, if Pike was still commanding the Enterprise, Kirk wasn't going to get it. So it makes sense that he wouldn't be. But Kirk is the kind of person like, we're going to push our engines to the extremes just so that way we can get there because I distress signal. But that does make me wonder, where was the Farragut during the events of the original episode? Kirk did mention they pushed Warp 9 as long as they could, so they pushed their engines to their max just to get there in time. So that implies that the Farragut, whoever was the captain in the prime timeline, the regular timeline, just didn't decide to push the engine. So that is kind of interesting. Though, given with rewatching Bounce to Kill, if the Farragut obviously could not even have been in the same sector because it should have showed up by the end of the episode, and maybe it did. Maybe it did. I could be wrong, but there's some interesting niches there. But again, timelines change, and Cook would be the kind of person to probably put the ship in that situation because it's Cook. But a big theme of this episode is so much about, in a way, it's kind of cause and effect. If Pike circumvents his fate, something else, maybe even worse, is going to happen. In that case, it's war with the Romulans, and Spock gets severely injured, to the point where he couldn't go back. He couldn't go and begin the process of Vulcan-Romulan reunification, a peace between the Romulans and the Federation. That's all because of Spock. Literally, we see that in Discovery. We see that eventually does pay off. We see that why Spock is so important. Sure, Kirk is important and all that, and his actions are vital to the prime timeline going the way it's supposed to go. But at the same time, it's more what happens to Spock because of the different leadership styles of Spike. I combine Spock and Pike, of Pike and Kirk. Very different leadership styles. In some ways, people always like to say, who's your favorite captain, Kirk or Picard? But in some ways, Picard is to Pike what Cisco is to Cook. I'm serious. Personality-wise, in terms of taking actions, there's a lot more similarities. Pike is a diplomat, just like Picard. They're more reserved, they're more careful. While Cisco and Cook are like, they're more willing to take risks. They also know when not to take risks, but they are much more willing to take risks. Just look at how Cisco punched Q when Picard never did and never would. But Pike and Spock and Kirk, guess who's probably going to end up punching Q? It's going to be Kirk. And that's the point of this episode. It's not that Pike made the wrong choices. He objectively made decent choices for him. But the thing is, him and Kirk were both acting without perfect knowledge of the Romulans. That's the key thing. And what it is just so happens Kirk's decision making fit better with not having perfect knowledge than Pike's did in this one situation. I have a feeling you could find another situation where things went badly for Kirk, and you put Pike in there, it would have gone excellent. And that's, I think, a key thing. Pike was the wrong person during this incident. That's the point. I also don't think Let's just look at previous episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Some of those episodes, like, I don't think Cook could have pulled it off. Episode 7, I don't think he could have pulled it off in the same way Pike did, because Cook is a bit more rough, for lack of a better term. He would have probably antagonized the pirates a bit more, while Pike was able to smooth talk them into a much better situation. Not the best situation, but still much better situation for the crew. And that's the point. That's, I think, a major point of this episode is Pike and Cook are two different captains of two different leadership styles, and their own styles are best in some situations. Even episode 1, I don't think Cook would have done super well at all in that. I think it would have gone terrible with Cook in that position, and that's just something to note, how these characters being different characters, different people, means put them in different situations, or the same situation, they're going to respond differently. And this was an excellent character story because of that. We got to really explore Pike's character by putting him in a situation we know how it's going to play out when Cook was the one making the decisions. But by just changing that, we get to see how things are different, and how Pike is not a war captain, not a warrior. He's a diplomat. That's who he is. And also to mention, and this is a time travel story. It's not a submarine type story like Balance of Terror was. That episode was very much a submarine story, submarine battle. The hunter, the kind of spaceships both kind of film more the submarine role, but the point still stands. Strange New Worlds already did that kind of episode, so that's not what they needed to focus on in this episode. They didn't even focus on the tension of silent running, of making sure you're not detected, and trying to detect the enemy before you can detect the enemy. There's a reason why I think Strange New Worlds showed less of what was going on the Romulan ship, simply because that was not the point of the story. It was not to put these characters into a tense submarine-style engagement. The point was that character study of Pike, and how he was not the captain for this one situation, and how if he circumvents his fate with an accident that leaves him in the jail, and not the captain's jail, that by doing that it means much worse things, war with the Romulans, and ending any possibility of peace with the Romulans at any point, because Spock is not there to lead the peace negotiations. Think that also would mean war with the Klingons probably wouldn't have ended too. I mean, look at the Undiscovered Country. It was Spock who helped reach out to the Klingons to help get the peace negotiations going. Sure, it helped that the Klingon Chancellor and then his daughter were both willing to, take a chance at peace, the Undiscovered Country, in the future and all that. But that wouldn't have happened on the Federation side without Spock there pushing Kirk along to make the right choices. So that was not addressed in this episode. It was more alluded to the Romulan aspects and the peace with the Romulans, but the Klingons are also very much affected. Though who knows, war between the Federation and the Romulans could impact Klingon Federation relations too. But we know at this time, as the original series in Strange New Worlds, Klingons and Federation are not on the best terms. But that is just another unique thing that they did in this story, which I really enjoyed seeing. Just taking that other take on it. And so much more. But there's a few other little things to note. In this time, essentially the events depicted implies that if Cook ever comes across Khan out in the alternate timeline, he's going to be out more familiar because of Laurent Nunez Singh being on the Farragut with him as a commander. So probably second or third officer, pretty up there. Also, a few other things. We also see Nurse Chapel during these events, and she was not there in the original series. I watched it just now, so I know. But of course, she probably might have been in the background. But that is very much interesting how they were, because she was on Strange New Worlds, they were able to bring her in for Quality of Mercy's take on the events of Balance of Terror. And we can definitely show they definitely show that she does have feelings for Spock, because you can tell she's feeling emotional, that she's tearing up when Spock is in sickbay, severely injured, missing a leg, burnt face, basically the condition Pike would have been in if he hadn't circumvented his fate by writing one letter, which is quite interesting. Of course, as at the end of the episode, Pike realizes he can't circumvent his fate. Um, so, so it's kind of saying Star Trek is kind of leaning toward a deterministic timeline, but in some ways, if Pike didn't know about his fate, would that have occurred? I'm wondering if they're going to address that in Strange New Worlds. If I wouldn't be. That actually would be a good story where Pike loses his knowledge briefly of what's going to happen to him, and he circumvents his fate that way. But by knowing his fate, he fulfills it. But if he doesn't know, I wonder if they're going to take that approach. But it's kind of interesting that Pike basically realizes he must do this, and it's going to be better for everyone. He'll save the cadets. Sure, he could save them another way, but he needs to save them this way so he can we're going to take what the Vulcans say. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. But it's definitely a very interesting thing to make note of. There's probably so much more I could address in this episode. How well done they did with aging up the actor who played Pike. Why can't I remember his name? Oh, seriously, I can't remember his name. But they did a very good job there. They did a take on the TOS movies uniforms, which I gotta say looked amazing. I mean, they did a very good job. I'm probably using that for my thumbnail, unless I use a different one. Depends on what's a good picture I can find. But they did such a good job, and doing a new take on Balance of Terror without it being a direct copy, because they're exploring different characters. And they're not doing a submarine story anymore, submarines warfare story. So they can focus on other aspects. Here they focus more on the differences between Kirk and Spike. I keep on combining names together, Kirk and Pike. That is a very good way of doing this story, because we already had the submarine combat in the original episode, of course, and also in episode not 7. That was the Serene Squall. Was it 6? It might have been 6, or was it 4? I really wish I could remember that. They already did that once before, so they didn't need to retrend that genre of story. Instead, they could essentially tell the time travel story that they wanted to tell, which I think allowed them to tell still showing the events we have seen before. They could actually do a new take on it without it seeming repetitive, and that's what I really enjoyed about this episode. But I would like to hear from you. What did you think of this episode? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, be sure to like, share, upvote, subscribe, follow, all the normal YouTube and social media stuff. Check out the links down below. And thank you for watching my review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 1, Episode 10, A Quality of Mercy. So thank you for watching. If you haven't done so already, feel free to like, upvote, share, subscribe, follow, heart. You know the drill. Check out the links down below. And as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. Have a good one. Bye! So thank you for watching. If you haven't done so already, feel free to like, upvote, share, subscribe, follow, heart. You know the drill. Check out the links down below. And as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. Live long and prosper.